Another call out that came, this one I didn't like so much, and I'll tell you what. Curtis Blaydes called out Stipe Miocic. The reason I didn't love that, Curtis used to train with Stipe. So there's always a little bit of a double cross when a guy calls out another guy. Now, Curtis was very cool about his training with Stipe, and he spoke very publicly that, hey, Stipe kicked my ass. I could go with him in the wrestling, but in the boxing, we're light years apart. He was just very open and candid about it, so I really respected that side of it. The reason it was a little bit of for me, just a little bit resistant for me, is there is nothing on that fight. I'm not sure why Curtis would break the deal or cost himself a friendship over a fight that he can't get, is not likely to get. If he did get, isn't going to be meaningful and do great business, is not for a championship. In those regards, it was a little bit of a surprise. A few guys have called Stipe out. Junior Dos Santos is one of them. I don't know what Stipe's going to do. I don't know where his head at. What I would like Stipe to do is nothing. I would like Stipe to take his oars out of the water for a little bit. And I know he's disciplined. I know he's in the gym. I know he's training. I know he's always ready. I understand all of these things. But Stipe's career has been without a plan in terms of the marketing aspect. I don't blame Stipe for that. He just seemed to be a guy that there was no long-term promotional plan and or strategy for. It appeared that as he was a contender, I had the same feeling when he was a champion, and I think it has been exemplified since he lost the title. Immediately, as a matter of fact. The fact that he was not interviewed in the ring after the fight, that he was dusted and swept away, the fact that he is one of the most recognizable fighters in the sport, and that he is the most decorated heavyweight champion of all time, and that he went through Murderer's Row to get there, I might add. He went through Murderer's Row to get that belt. Nothing handed to him. And the fact that there has been absolutely no discussion of him confuses me. But it does bring me back to the premise and the point I'm trying to make here, that there is just no strategy and plan in place from a marketing standpoint for Stipe Miocic, and I think that that needs to change. And I think that is incumbent on Stipe Miocic. He cannot count on anybody else to do that for him. Very few fighters, in fact, have a marketing strategy and plan that is laid out for them by the promotion. Very few. So don't have your feelings hurt or be surprised or think he's being looked down on. He's actually just in the norm. He's actually very usual for having this. He's very on par. I just look at him and go, man, we got a finished product here. We got a tough, big, good athlete that can use his hands, use his legs, use his wrestling, stay out of submissions, and has no problem whether the fight's 3 rounds or 5 rounds. So we got a finished product there physically. Let's back up and let's come up with a strategy and a plan for his future and for his career. And when he was coming up as a contender, that wasn't as relevant. I mean, as a contender, your first job is to get attention. The attention has to come. So you take any fight you can. You do everything you can to make sure that it's a televised fight, that it's a big card fight, that's a co-main or main event that comes along with PR and media tours that are absolutely built in as part of the paradigm of, in this case, the UFC, but UFC and Bellator. If you're a co-main or a main, there are things that are going to come with that. In Stipe's spot as a contender, he did everything right and kept getting the exposure and was not afraid to speak up. And ultimately, it was him speaking up that got him the title fight. I mean, you guys remember that moment. He yelled viciously, angrily, and sincerely at Dana White from the octagon after a win. And Dana laughed. Dana's like, man, you got it. You got it. Damian Maia got a title shot largely because of that same way. Remember how Damian won all those fights but couldn't get in there for a title shot? And Dana's like, look, enough's enough. Here it is. This is the guy. I think Damian was like 7 in a row at that time. Boom. Enough's enough. You're going in there. Oh, but there's other fights that could draw more. Yeah, I hear it. Damian, you're going in there. Whatever it is. If I got to write the check for it, this kid's getting a chance. That was Dana's standpoint. And he did the same with Stipe. So I'm saying if you look at this, the build-up to Stipe getting it was really great, and he had to take matters into his own hands. And he did, and it paid off. But that's not a plan. That's not a strategy. That was a unique and organic, stone-cold Steve Austin. Here's the microphone, here's my moment, and I'm going to see what happens. I now think that Stipe needs a plan because nobody is going to do it for him, and I don't know why. I don't know why he wasn't one of those guys that just stick. Stipe Miocic is a real-life superhero. If you were to sit down and write out what you would love for yourself or for your son to grow up and become, it's Stipe Miocic. Solid all the way around. Handsome guy. Nice guy. Fireman. Loyal, dedicated, tougher than hell, athletic. Goal-driven, responsible. I mean, you go through the list. Stipe. He is literally a true-life superhero. People like him do not exist, except right now he does. So why he isn't being grabbed or why it didn't catch on, we could sit back and speculate about, but that is the piece that's missing. So before he anxiously sees that he was called out and just steps right up to the plate against Curtis Blaydes or anybody else, I've got no problem stylistically with Stipe Miocic. Okay, so what I'm saying is it's not a matter that he needs to go in the gym and work on anything. I think he showed that in the Cormier fight, even in defeat. He got caught with a big hand. Right, that punch would have put anybody else on the roster out too, and he caught one and was coming off of a break. It wasn't what you would train for that you would normally see. It's why it worked. Boom, Daniel threw the hook. Boom, Stipe went down. I thought he looked great in that fight up until then. I thought he was even controlling some of the wrestling with the underhooks, took Daniel's back at one point. Might have taken him down. I'd have to rewatch and see if I remember that. But the point is Stipe looked really good. So we got that part covered. That's usually the part we spend all the time on. The piece that's missing for him is a marketing strategy and plan. And I don't have the answers for you right now. I also haven't sat down and come up with one for him that I would like to suggest and lay out there for you guys. Lay out for him to take a look at and see if he wants to do it. But I would sit back for a moment, and I'll remind you guys, he was just in the ring a month ago. It was not that long. Give him a minute. But before he comes back, before he speaks up, before he takes those phone calls, and before he accepts some matches, that's the piece that he needs to work on. He needs to work on it. He needs to find it. He either needs to challenge the UFC, go, guys, what is your plan with me? And they may come back and just candidly look, hey, we don't have one. We'd like you to fight Curtis Blaydes, and it's going to be on this card, and maybe it's a main event of a free TV, and maybe it's somewhere in the placement on a pay-per-view. But I think that he needs to sit down and go, do you have a plan for me? And if they say no, and they may say no, go, okay, I'll call you back, but I'm now going to come up with one. And whether he sits down with his team, whether he calls some really creative, smart guy that he's known from his past, or whether he goes out and hires somebody on his own and writes the check himself, he needs to come up with an idea and a strategy and a plan.